So I figured I would begin my whole convention review video series that I talked about making with not only the con that is coming up in closest to the time of this video being made, but is also the first con that I ever went to. So everything kind of comes full circle. And that, of course, is Dragoncon. So Dragoncon, just a little bit of history about the event itself. It's been going on for almost 35 years and is one of the biggest cons on the East Coast, definitely the biggest con in the Southeast. And it is a multi-genre convention focusing mostly on sci-fi. But as we'll get into the video, you guys will learn that there is quite a diverse level of programming that the con offers, and you can find just about anything that you're into nerd-wise at this event, including some very niche things that I don't see really at any other convention at all. So we'll get into that. But this is mostly about, as I am going to say in every one of these videos, this is not a objective review. This is all completely subjective, anecdotal, based on my own personal experiences and what I personally derive value from in terms of how I enjoy a convention. I'm sure your experiences are subject to change, and you have your own personal opinion as to what you value in a convention as to for what they offer and how well you think it's managed, etc., etc. So this is all entirely opinionated and subjective. Just keep that in mind as we go through this. So I wanted to tell my kind of personal story with Dragoncon. So I'm going to Dragoncon since 2007 and have not missed a single year since then. I've been very lucky. I've been able to get work off on Labor Day weekend every year to go. And I'm also very lucky that the rest of my family, including my father, are also big into Dragoncon, and they've helped us kind of pay for it as a group because it is a very expensive con, and I'll talk about that as we go through. So our first experience going in 2007 was actually, we had heard about it a couple times through some of my father's coworkers. And my brother, just on a whim, said, I think on a Friday, he was like, hey, that Dragoncon thing is this weekend. You guys want to go to that? And we were like, of course. So we went down there the next day. We only went for that Saturday in 2007. We saw the line of people wrapped around the hotel, and we had no idea where to go. So we ended up going into the Hyatt Regency Hotel in downtown Atlanta now. Dragoncon has always been very adamant about being a hotel convention, not a convention center convention, which is very important because it's able to get away with certain things, being open at a certain time, having events late at night, not truly ever closing down at night. It never ends. It goes consecutively from the beginning of Thursday to to like 5 o'clock on Monday, and there's no official breaks in between. There's continuous programming, continuous events. It's a 24-hour convention. So the hotels that Dragoncon takes place in, and notice I said hotels plural, is the Hyatt Regency, the Marriott Marquis, and the Hilton, which are all connected by a sky bridge. In later years, they would add other buildings, which I'll get into, but at the time, it was just these three buildings. So we go into the Hyatt, and we see a totally canon, screen-accurate Boba Fett cosplayer from Star Wars, and I didn't even know what cosplay was at the time, but a guy dressed up in a Boba Fett costume that would look like it was straight out of the film, 100% screen accurate down to the last detail. Little did we know at the time that there was a huge, big fan base and community for Star Wars at the time. That was a costuming community, rather. Obviously, Star Wars has a big fan base, but so we kind of just asked him, we're like, where do we go to register? And he kind of gave us the directions to the bottom of the hotel where we would go and register. And then 3.5 hours later of being in line, we finally got our one-day badges. And I was young at the time. I wasn't all that physically active, so I did not have the physical endurance to be on my feet for this long. And so I was cranky and exhausted by the time we got through this line. But we had a good time once we got in there. I remember seeing quite a few costumes that stuck out to me, especially like the Star Wars stuff, and Pirates of the Caribbean was really big at the time of this convention. And we went to the Hall of Fame and got a couple of autographs. While we were waiting in line, we were waiting in line for the autographs for the actors that played Fred and George Weasley from Harry Potter, and we ended up meeting two people who were waiting in line behind us, and we had no choice but to stop and make conversation with them because we were stuck in line together. And these people ended up becoming are some of our best friends. They were our first ever convention friends, and we maintained those friendships for years afterwards. I still talk to both of them semi regularly, and whereas they've kind of both gone their separate paths in life. My life has definitely been significantly impacted by those two friends. I have a framed picture on the wall in the hallway there of the very first day that we met them at that Dragoncon, the that Saturday while we were waiting in line. We have a photo of me and my brother and the two of them. So a very profound moment, and that kind of shaped my perception of convention culture and what it's like to meet people there. So here's the thing that you guys have to know about cons if you've never been, is that there's this whole mentality, because you have all these people who are socially awkward nerds who have all these different passions that they enjoy, and they're all coming together at this one event to enjoy these things together. And so everybody has this hyper excitement going on, and that hyper excitement kind of breaks down some social barriers that would otherwise be in the way. And that helps out quite a bit, to where people just interject themselves into other people's conversations, and they just are extraordinarily extroverted and friendly, more so than they ever would be. So it's much easier to make friends when you can just kind of visually see somebody's commonality, and there's a level of understanding there because everybody's kind of a nerd and they're in their own environment. I'm sure it would be the same thing regardless of what type of fandom you're a part of if you were to go to an event like this. So as Dragoncon continued on throughout the years, it only got bigger and bigger and bigger. And in 2012, I believe it was. Yeah, it was definitely in 2012. I recall going to a panel, and they were talking about having to increase the price just a little bit more. So I think oh, don't quote me on this, this is probably incorrect, but it's somewhere between $145 and $165 for the full day pass at its highest price. So if you were to pre-register after this year's event for next year, it would be much cheaper, but it gradually goes up and up and up and up the closer you get to the con. And then there's a fixed at-the-door rate, which is slightly cheaper than the highest online pre-register price. They increased the price to that amount because they were worried that if they didn't do that as a way to kind of moderate the quantity of people that were showing up, that they would have to cap attendance, which would be really bad to have to turn people away at the door. But basically they wanted to try to moderate the quantity, the maximum number of people that would go, because it was just getting so huge, and fire code concerns were very legitimate. However, I can say with absolute certainty that Dragoncon is an incredibly well-managed con. There are hundreds of staff members and volunteers that are all very well experienced. I've never had an issue with staff at Dragoncon. I've never had an issue with another attendee harassing me or anything like that. I've never had an issue with weapons check or programming or stuff starting on time. Everything has always gone by without a hitch, and that's because they're experienced, they know what they're doing, they communicate well, and there's a lot of planning and prep that goes into it. When you have an event that attracts 80,000 plus people every year, whether it be actual purchased badges or just people coming in to attend the con. And that's not even including the people that show up on Peachtree Street just to watch the parade. By the way, there's a parade every year that goes down on Peachtree Street, which has like customized cars, including the car that my father has created, and floats and just marching huge groups of cosplayers, including the 501st for Star Wars and all the other awesome groups that there are. So Dragoncon has kind of a reputation for being a big party con, where you go to get drunk and have a really wild and crazy time, and people get super rowdy and throw parties in their rooms, and a bunch of stuff gets broken, and everybody has a really good time that may or may not be extremely dangerous. That reputation is warranted only up until a point. Don't believe everything people say about that, because here's the thing, here's the real truth about Dragoncon. During the day, it is actually very kid-friendly. During the day, it's basically all ages. You won't see anything that's extremely inappropriate. And a lot of the attendees that are older and have more elaborate costumes are very polite to children. They know that Children attending Dragoncon is very important, so they're very polite to them, they're very respectful, they don't say anything crude or inappropriate, they don't dress extremely crude and inappropriate, and there's not a lot of rowdy things going on there during the day. There's also a lot more family-friendly programming going on during the day. But when you get into the evening, that's where you get into some of the more risque territory. So you have cosplayers that come out wearing nothing but body paint and pasties, and you have some more risque outfits, and you have people getting rowdy and drunk, and you have the burlesque shows and the panels that dive into some more risque and mature content, and so that's to be expected. So people have this sort of impression that Dragoncon has this dark side, this dark underbelly. That's not really true. It just kind of depends on what time of day you're there. So it is 100% safe for you to bring your children if you're not familiar with it already. In terms of cosplay there, again, the vast majority of the cosplayers are from sci-fi and fantasy. So Star Wars is really huge, comic books are really huge, so Marvel and DC, Tolkien, Game of Thrones, all very, very popular. I would say that anime and like Japanese video games, the kind of things you see heavily cosplayed at anime conventions, only make up, depending on the year, only make up about 15% or less of the total attendance. And we never really had any big photo shoots for anime at Dragoncon ever. We now have just finally got to a point after doing the Fate group for 7-8 years or whatever that we're having a Fate Dragoncon meetup. We had one last year, we're having one again this year, so it's becoming like a mainstay. I have always tried to do the Final Fantasy meetups to some moderate success, give or take a couple years. So I've had some of my best cosplay experiences with the Final Fantasy group there, and some of my worst. So there was ever since we kind of made it more structured, it's been good. But there was one year where we had like a photo shoot at like 8 o'clock at night on like the bottom floor of the Marriott, where the lighting was terrible and everybody there was drunk, and I already had like a cold coming down, so I was like, the hell with this, I'm not sticking around for this. I ended up leaving. But it was so bad to where nobody would even, like, cosplayers were like looking the wrong way and not facing the camera. There's a lot of unspoken rules about photo shoots that everybody seems to mutually understand if you cosplayed for any amount of time or you've been to any amount of different cons, about like, you always kind of organize people in height order, which is why it's usually beneficial to stage a photo shoot on some kind of gradual elevation or a staircase, so you can have tall people in the back, short people in the front, so everybody is somewhat visible. Because if you have everybody on a flat plane and you try to stagger them front to back, sometimes it doesn't work out. These people had no clue about any of that. They didn't really care. They were just having a good time. But I met some very, very cool people through those meetups. Very, very glad I had that opportunity, and I'd love to join again. I actually kind of trolled them last year. We had a nice little photo shoot out in Hardy Ivy Park. It was very civil, but like maybe 15 people showed up for that, and like 9 or 10 of those 15 people were Final Fantasy 15 cosplayers, and there was like a couple of Kingdom Hearts cosplayers and like a couple of like Final Fantasy 7 cosplayers, and I was sitting there in my Dragon Quest cosplay as Lucius from Dragon Quest Heroes, because it's always listed on Facebook as the Dragoncon Square Enix / Final Fantasy photo shoot. So I'm like, yeah, I'll show up as a Dragon Quest character, and they were totally cool with it. Like, I got plenty of pictures and everything. They were really happy to see me. So, and so yeah, definitely hit or miss with some of the groups there. Mostly everything was good, but I guess it depends on who's organizing it. You have such a large quantity of people that there's not always going to go well. It's somewhat like Anime Expo, and I'll actually come back to that point here in a second. So I plan to do an entire video talking about my experience with the 405th, the Halo group, and what an amazing experience that has been, because they are extremely well structured and organized and disciplined. But the bigger thing is that they are so nice and accepting and welcoming to new people, and I just couldn't be more grateful for that. I first marched so I'd wanted to do a Halo cosplay since like 2009, but I only got my armor finished in 2016. So I marched in the parade for the first time after going to Dragoncon for almost a decade. I finally marched in the parade for the first time in 2016 and did it the last 3 years. So I'm not marching in the parade this year because my armor is in shambles, but I did a lot of repairs to it earlier today, and I will be attending the 405th photo shoot, and some of those people are just incredible, and they're so nice. I wish I could see and hang out with some of them more often, but unfortunately, I only get to see a lot of them once a year. But even then, it's still a very memorable experience. So I want to talk about how manageable Dragoncon is as an event, as an attendee, as just a fan, and how approachable it is for newcomers. So the one thing I'll caution you on with Dragoncon is that it is very challenging for newcomers. So if you've never been to a convention before, or if you only go to smaller conventions, anime conventions, be very cautious going to Dragoncon. I would actually recommend that you go with somebody who is a regular, because you need to be able to find your way in and out through the venue. If you can navigate the venue well enough, you'll be okay. But the last thing you want to do is get trapped in a crowd that's slow moving for a while, because, and of course I have some crowd management skills from work, but it's also the fact that I've been to Dragoncon so many times. I know my way through the venue, and there are certain paths you can take to get around the crowds that are a lot better. I'm not going to go into specific details, but you have to be mindful of accessibility, fire exits, fire code. You can't be guiding people through a restricted area. You really have to know where you can go, where you can't go. But you can find where like the hot spots are. Like if you're trying to get to the food court in Peachtree Center and you want to get there through the Sky Bridge in the Marriott, you have to be able to find a way to get to the atrium level of the Marriott and get to the Sky Bridge and still avoid the crowd there that's on the atrium level, because there's the bar is up there on the atrium level, and it's just a really challenging endeavor to try to get through there. Also, again, it is very expensive, but here's the thing about the price for the badge, is that you get what you pay for if you decide to take advantage of all the things that badge offers. And here's what I mean about that. And this is, again, where the personal opinion comes in. If you spend $160 on a badge and you don't bother to go to any of the programming, and I'll go into what the programming is in a second, but if you don't bother to take advantage of any of that stuff, you're just doing yourself a disservice. You're robbing yourself of a perfectly good opportunity to get your money's worth out of that badge. Because some people literally just go there to cosplay and get drunk, and some people just go there to get drunk. But take advantage of all the things that badge gives you access to, because there is a very, very, very diverse programming track that runs for the entire weekend. There are concerts, raves, dances, balls, masquerades, the burlesque shows. The concerts are actually really incredible, by the way, as well, and some of them don't even start until 3:30 in the morning. So there is a ton of content. The guests that you get to meet are incredible. Just short of like San Diego Comic-Con level of guests, they are incredible. So like this year, some of the big highlights are Carl Urban is going to be there. David Tennant of Doctor Who is going to be there. In the past, we've had people like Nathan Fillion from Halo and Firefly, Matt Smith from Doctor Who. We've had all kinds of crazy people. We've had, again, another Halo reference, Steve Downs and Jen Taylor, met them at Dragoncon. Just a incredible guest list. Every single year they knock it out of the park. And a lot of times they do like to focus on something that's relevant and topical, but not to the level that San Diego Comic-Con does, certainly. And it is not nearly as much of a line con as Comic-Con is, but if you're trying to get to a panel or a concert or whatever it is, get there early and get your spot in line. The lines are heavily regulated by the con staff to make sure that you know where you're going and that you don't queue up in a line before it is allowed by the con. They usually will try to. You can't also just sit in a room and marathon panels all day. They will empty the room and let the next few people in. So if you want to watch 2 back-to-back panels, you're probably going to be out of luck, because you'll have to get back in that line and do it over again. And so a lot of times what I will do is leave a panel a little bit early to get in line for a next one, and kind of strategically plan out my day with maybe an hour or so in between certain events that I want to go to. Because if there's two things that are directly back to back, you're probably going to be out of luck, especially if you have to go to another hotel to do it. So now Dragoncon has grown so much that now we not only have the Hyatt, the Marriott, and the Hilton, we also have the Sheraton down the road, a couple block or two or so, that is mainly only used for registration and certain other programming events. One year they had the British programming track, which would talk about shows like Sherlock, Doctor Who, and even BBC's Top Gear when that was still around. And with the three lads, and I remember going to a Top Gear panel there. It seems like such an odd thing to go to at a nerd convention, but yeah, it was great. And we also have the Westin, which is the cylindrical tower building that you can see anywhere in the Atlanta skyline. It's pretty famous, and that one is just for panels. It's not very spacious. It's more of like an aesthetic thing with the way it's laid out, but a lot of good panels happen there. And then the America's Mart buildings, two huge, massive like mall style buildings that are used for the dealers' rooms. The dealers' rooms used to be on the bottom two levels of the Marriott. They kicked them out of there so that those can be used for the Walk of Fame, where you go meet the celebrities. So also for safety reasons as well. So the way that you kind of snake your way through the America's Mart to do the dealer's room is pretty awesome as well. But it's easy to get lost in there. Make sure to keep your program guide and your map on you so you know where you are. Keep track of what floor and what direction you came in from and where you're trying to leave from. And it makes sense that you zigzag and make sure you look at every single booth so you don't miss anything. And you probably want to go through the dealer's room on Friday, like a few hours after it opens. It won't be extremely crowded in there. Don't go in the middle of the day on Saturday, because it will be packed and you will not be able to get in and out of there in less than a couple of hours. And then you can go back to the dealer's room on Monday morning, and it'll be a lot more slow. The con will be dying down. The vendors are kind of relaxed and tired, and they're just wanting to sell their stuff. So you might be able to bargain for some prices on Monday. But yeah, Sunday afternoon or Monday is kind of the best time to shop because it's died down. But do not go in the middle of the day on Saturday. It is very, very packed. You will probably be waiting in a line on the street to get to the building itself, and you don't want to get sunburned. So don't do that. As far as the programming itself, so Dragoncon has, like I said, a million times in this video so far, an incredibly diverse programming track that consists of writing, novels, comic books, artistry, puppeteering. Dragoncon actually is a host to the biggest puppet show in the world, or the puppet show that has the most people that show up for it. It's really cool, actually. I've been to it once or twice. There's a robotics competition where people fight. Like, remember the TLC show Robot Wars? They would go and fight with the robots. They have a track like that as well. They have their own wrestling track as well. Again, fantasy, sci-fi, fan theories, discussions, science such as astrophysics and paleontology. If you guys have seen Joe Rogan's podcast and seen Trevor Vail on there, he's the guy, the paleontologist with the dyed beard that gets all pissed off about the dinosaurs are fake video. He's an authentic paleontologist. He is usually a guest at Dragoncon and does paleontology panels, no joke. So there is a panel there for everything. I went to a panel that was about the BioShock game series that talked about the theme of like utopia future versus dystopia future, and how the themes of BioShock and how they're derived from Ayn Rand and Atlas Shrugged and things like that. So there is just such an incredible, diverse programming track. I've been to Star Trek panels. I've been to, again, the Halo panels, the puppet show, cosplay panels, everything you can possibly think of. Way, way more diverse programming than other conventions. And so, again, I encourage you, if you're going to spend that money on that badge, and you can just spend it however you want, I legitimately don't care, but do yourself a favor and do more than just get drunk at the con. go to some of these concerts, go to the panels, expose yourself to some new fandoms, new opportunities. You may find something that you really, really like. Other conventions like anime conventions have tabletop gaming panels, video game panels, Q&As, crafting things for how to build cosplay and all that. That's all fairly standard, and it's the kind of stuff people go to conventions for. But Dragoncon has all of that, and then like all these other weird niche genres that you would never expect. One of my favorite panels at Dragoncon is one of the ones that probably requires the least amount of knowledge and effort to put on, but it's such a cool little niche obscure thing. It's called Son of ... So it's Son of something like every year, but just Son of. And it is literally just a panel of dank memes. And it's not like childish humor, like it's not like meme compilation, like a bunch of vines or like stupid shit like that kids laugh at nowadays. It's like legitimately funny videos, and then it's like original skits, original animations and art that legitimately deserves a lot of exposure, and he kind of brings those videos to light. And so it's like those two genres, plus it's like the strangest things you'll ever see on the internet, all combined into one panel. It's 3 hours long, 45 minutes of video, 15 minutes of trivia, and the guy is literally just wholesale giving out like DVD box sets of anime and stuff as the prizes for getting the trivia right. It throws out like candy to everybody in the audience. It is a absolute riot, and it does not feel like 3 hours. It goes by like that. It is just so much fun. I'm hoping that I get to go to that this year. So I will talk about the cosplay scene in more detail in other videos when I talk about specific groups. I think Dragoncon probably has the single biggest photo shoot I've ever seen in my life, which was a Marvel photo shoot in 2016 or 2017. I have a video of it on the other channel, the Star-Crossed Souls Zoids channel, which is my original channel, and you can see that there. It was probably 300-400 people. It was the biggest photo shoot I've ever seen in my life. It was ridiculous how many Marvel cosplayers were there. I had never seen anything like it before or since. We're hoping that this year Marvel will probably be pretty big at the con, all things considered, because the state we're in with Marvel and the MCU. So that was everything I could think of just off the top of my head about why Dragoncon is awesome. So would I recommend this con? Absolutely. Absolutely. You just have to go and experience the spectacle for yourself. It is a massive con, unrivaled by barely any cons out there. I mean, there are cons that are bigger, but to me, this con offers a lot of the same impressive celebrity list and events and all that without the bullshit like premium exclusivity stuff that like Anime Expo and SDCC kind of shoehorn you into. There's no $400 premium badge, and there's nothing that you need to do at this con that necessarily necessitates the need for a premium badge. The con is just ran well enough where you can get in and out of every panel you want to go to if you're strategic enough and you get there early. But it is very challenging for newcomers, and so I enjoy it because I've been going since 2007. I cannot say that everybody could just buy a badge and walk in there and have a good time. It's very, very challenging. So go with somebody you know. Take a deep breath and try not to get overwhelmed by the crowd. Don't go too ambitious with cosplay if you don't have to, because there are tight spaces, lots of crowds, and you will get your cosplay beaten up and damaged if you try to walk it through a crowd. So be very careful with that. And please stay hydrated. You may be away from food for a very long time as well, because the restaurants on Peachtree Street, there's a lot of great food in the area. There's a ton of great food in the area. That's not a problem at all. It's just the wait to get into restaurants is absurd, and so you'll probably be utilizing the Peachtree Center food court and the CNN. Don't go to the CNN Center. That was a Freudian slip. The CVS that's right there in Peachtree Center as well. But that's probably your safest option for food. So just be safe and make sure to stay hydrated. So yeah, overall Dragoncon is awesome. I highly recommend it. So if you guys are going to Dragoncon, then make sure to hit me up. Let me know if you're going. Let me know what you're cosplaying. Let me know what you're excited about this year at Dragoncon, and I will see you guys there, and I will see you guys when we do the next convention review. I think I want to do my reviews of MetroCon, HamaCon, and Anime Expo between now and AWA, because those are cons that I will not be going to next year, and those cons have all passed this year. AWA, Anime Week in Atlanta, is technically the next con I'm going to after Dragoncon, but it's not until the end of October, beginning of November this year. So I have a little bit more time to think about what I want to say. So thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time.